Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our program Africa Today, where we'll be taking you in a tour in the African continent, our latest developments on the ground in the African continent. We start off with some African news, where the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abdel, received Henry Okello, the Ugandan Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, on Monday. The meeting took place on the sidelines of the Invest in Uganda Forum held in Cairo, organized in cooperation between the Ugandan Embassy and the Egyptian African Business Association. Abdel praised the growing momentum in bilateral relations between the two nations, noting the frequency of recent high-level visits. He emphasized the necessity of building upon the outcome of the third round of ministerial consultations that held earlier this April between the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Water Resources and Irrigation to further elevate political and economic files. Foreign Minister also stressed the importance of strengthening trade, economic and investment cooperation across the various sectors, particularly the infrastructure, energy, agriculture, water resources management and pharmaceuticals. Also, Minister of Foreign Affairs Abdel discussed preparations for holding a key Sudan conference in Berlin, as well as broader tensions in the Horn of Africa. In a phone call on Sunday with the EU envoy Annette Weber, the Foreign Ministry said the call focused on the Berlin Ministerial Conference on Sudan, scheduled for 15th of April, as diplomatic efforts intensify to contain the ongoing conflict and address its humanitarian fallout. The Foreign Ministry statement said that Abdel underscored the importance of preserving Sudan's unity and territorial integrity. He also emphasized supporting Sudan's national institutions, rejecting any attempts to parallel entities. Additionally, Abdel called for launching a Sudanese-led political process to end the conflict. He also urged humanitarian truce as a first step towards a sustainable ceasefire that would allow aid deliveries and ease civilian suffering. According to the statement, also the Foreign Minister further condemned violations against civilians in Sudan, describing them a flagrant breach of international humanitarian law. He also stressed the need to protect civilians and infrastructure. And to shed more light on this topic, we are delighted to have with us over the phone Mr. Abdel Rahman. He is a journalist. Good afternoon, Mr. Amr.
Good afternoon to you. I am even more delighted.
Thank you very much for joining us today in Africa Today. I would like to start first by asking you about how do you view Egypt's primary strategic objectives for the Berlin conference with regards to Sudan, and also how does it differ from previous international efforts?
Egypt, as its leading role and a leading country and a key country in this continent, has its own role, has its own effort to gather all the brothers in blood, the brothers in roots in Africa, all around in one vision and one strategy, containing any danger, containing any rebels or any chaotic scenes. Like we have witnessed in Sudan, we have great effort to bridge the gap between the Sudanese and help them to stay away from that chaotic scene and fight against any interference from abroad, whether domestically or regionally. We all know that Sudan is our own national security, our own precious part of our own national security, and a great part of this file. Also, not just Sudan, but all of the Nile Basin countries. We have a very common relation. We have a strong common relation. We have strong ties, and we should make all we can, all our best efforts to gather those countries in one vision, in one river.
Well, Mr. Amr, Egypt has been very clear about rejecting parallel entities in Sudan. In the current landscape of the conflict, how can the international community ensure that support is channeled through national institutions and also without being seen as taking sides in the civil war?
Well, Cairo had made it clear to the whole world, the East and to the West, that we are protecting the sovereignty and the stability in Sudan. We already have Sudan divided into two states, and
Yes.
today we are against the threat of dividing and another division in Sudan, and we are standing against that division with all our powers, with all our whether the soft powers or other kinds of powers. And we made it clear to the whole world that this is a part of our own national security.
Yes.
That's why we are talking about this situation internationally with the international associations like the EU, like the UN, like with other countries like Russia, like the USA, or whatsoever. At large, this is a part of our own national security, and we are against any terroristic attacks against the civilians or any terroristic groups like what they call it the rapid support.
Yeah. Mr. Amr, you just mentioned the terrorist groups. So beyond Sudan, the Horn of Africa now is facing a perfect storm of instability also. How concerned is Egypt, number one, that the collapse of state institutions in neighboring countries could lead to a permanent refugee crisis, and number two, the security vacuum for extremist groups?
According to what I call it, the map of our own national security in the continent, this map it expanded all over to the Nile Basin route in Ethiopia. So we are concerned about each and every part of this land, as of course this is our common interest with the African nations in this region.
Yeah.
What's going on in Sudan is just what's going on in the Horn of Africa. We have all witnessed what happened to the state of the Republic of Somalia, that has witnessed an unlegitimate state and unrecognized state called Somaliland. We are against recognition of this rogue state, only recognized by this unity existence and maybe one or two regimes in the whole world. And we are supporting the unity of Somalia, the unity of Sudan, and the unity of vision in the countries, not just in the Nile Basin, but the whole of continent. The whole continent of Africa is suffering still from colonialism influences and interference that we should together, according to our umbrella, the African Union, is to take a stand, a firm stand against any interference in our own national security or continental security.
Yes. Mr. Amr, you just mentioned the Somali crisis. So Cairo emphasized the need of sustainable funding for the African Union mission in Somalia lately. So is there a consensus between Cairo and Brussels on how to reform regional peacekeeping to make it more effective?
Well, of course, we need this step very firmly, and we sure know that one of the soft points in a country like Somalia is the economical crisis and the suffering that the people there are suffering. And of course, we know that by supporting their efforts economically, by supporting them even militarily throughout the umbrella of the African Union, we are supporting the unity of this republic. It's an Arabic African republic, and it should be protected by the African Union and, of course, led by the Egyptian effort. We have a very strong ties with the Somalian leadership, and we have received his His Excellency, the President of Somalia, in Egypt more than once, and he is depending on us to protect his sovereignty and his own Arabic African state.
Yes. Mr. Amr, Egypt advocates for a purely Sudanese-led political process. How do we move towards this vision when the warring parties remain entrenched and also external actors continue to exert significant influence?
As I have mentioned, we are up against a very critical crisis of interferences in Africa. And the only way to protect Africa and the African continent and the African national security and continental security is by uniting efforts based on an African vision, not an Eastern, not on Western vision, or any interferences from abroad. This is the only way to protect our own stability, our own sovereignty, because it's a whole lot of piece of land that is what affects Somalia, affects Egypt, what affects Egypt, affects Sudan, what affects Uganda or Kenya, it affects us.
Yes.
So we are
all connected.
We are all connected in one map that should be protected by the same vision and the same effort.
Yes. Mr. Amr, in the context of the Horn of Africa, does this include securing vital maritime routes like the Red Sea? And how does that link back to the stability of the Sudanese coast so far?
Well, this is a very excellent question, of course. The stability in the Red Sea is a very important file connected to the stability in the Horn of Africa and the whole of Africa, because it's a very delicate part in the map. Too many influences are there. The Israelis, the NATO. There are now, let's admit it, there are military bases by the Israelis and other countries. That is a true threat to our own national security and to the African security. And that's why we are against those bases, those military bases, and we are doing all our best at all levels, including militarily, to protect our own national security in Somalia throughout the umbrella, as I have mentioned, I repeat it, throughout the umbrella of the African Union. Of course, there are challenges, and they will not be eliminated in a day or night. But we are working on it, and we are standing to our own situation firmly, that we are against any interference economically, interference militarily in the Red Sea, whether by the Houthis or by the Iranians or by the Israelis.
Mr. Amr Abdel Rahman, the journalist, thank you very much for joining us today in Africa Today. And moving to our news, Egypt Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati met on Sunday with Dr. Hisham State, the head of the Egyptian Unified Procurement Authority, to discuss expanding cooperation in health security and boosting the presence of Egyptian medicines in African markets. The talks focused on Egypt's advanced pharmaceutical industry and regulatory expertise, which the minister said could help African countries access affordable medical supplies. Abdel Ati emphasized Egypt's role as a regional hub for medical and pharmaceutical industries, supporting continental health security and enabling African partners to benefit from the preferred access to Egyptian products. For his part, the state highlighted plans to expand cooperation with African partners to support shared health security goals. And Pope Leo XIV set out on a 10-day visit to Africa, his first as Pope to this continent, on Monday, arriving in Algeria. His tour includes 4 countries: Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea. The Pope is second major foreign visit since being elected to the PAPC in May last year. The tour will include stops-offs in 11 cities in 4 countries: Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea. And moving to Nigeria, Amnesty International said there were more than 100 people dead and 35 people seriously wounded, while a local chief spoke of 200 dead and wounded in northeast Nigeria. Let's watch.
Dozens of people died in airstrikes in Nigeria's northeastern Yobe state as military aircraft hunted Boko Haram. Local residents and Amnesty International reported the development. They said the airstrikes occurred on Saturday and the death tolls differed according to the sources. Amnesty International said on X there were more than 100 dead and 35 people seriously wounded, while a local chief spoke of 200 dead and wounded. Nigeria's military did not immediately comment on the incident. Africa's most populous country has been fighting an insurgency for 17 years since Boko Haram's 2009 uprising, which has seen the emergence of powerful splinter groups. While the insurgency is concentrated in the northeastern countryside, rebels from Nigeria and the neighboring Sahel have made inroads in western Nigeria, where organized crime gangs known as bandits have been raiding villages and extorting farmers and artisanal miners for years.
And South Africa Democratic Alliance elected a new leader to take the country's African National Conference party. The delegates at Party Federal Congress endorsed Hill Lewis after a campaign in which he was backed by much of the party's provincial and national leadership.
South Africa's second largest party hopes Cape Town Mayor Jordine Hill Lewis can widen its appeal. Jordine Hill Lewis has been praised for improving governance in Cape Town. South Africa's Democratic Alliance has elected Cape Town Mayor Jordine Hill Lewis as its leader, as the country's second largest party seeks to expand its electoral base ahead of crucial local government polls. Hill Lewis, 39, succeeds John Steenhuisen, who had led the pro-business DA since 2019. He is widely expected to continue his predecessor's core policies. Delegates at a Party Federal Congress endorsed Hill Lewis after a campaign in which he was backed by much of the party's provincial and national leadership. Speaking at length on what he called a crisis of fear in the country, he said that bringing law and order to South Africa must be the top priority. The DA currently holds 22% of seats in Parliament, but has positioned itself as the most viable alternative to an increasingly fractured ANC, which holds 14% of seats.
And 2 Benin polling stations closed as people in the West African nation voted for a new president on Sunday. Observers say Finance Minister Wadagani expected to coast the victory. Let's watch.
Benin's Finance Minister Rahman Wadagni is the favorite to win Benin's election after being endorsed by outgoing President Patrice Talon. Wadagni's only rival, Paul Hong-Pei, has a much lower profile. Nearly 8 million people are eligible to vote in Benin. Polling stations closed in Benin as people in the West African nation voted for a new president on Sunday. The election comes as the outgoing president stepped down after reaching his limit of 2 5-year terms and surviving a coup attempt last December. Talon has endorsed his 49-year-old finance minister to lead the next government. In his previous role, Wadagni oversaw a decade of consistent growth above 6% each year, a legacy he has campaigned on continuing. The main opposition party, the Democrats, is not fielding a candidate after its leader failed to secure enough parliamentary endorsements to get his name on the ballot.
By this, ladies and gentlemen, we reach the end of our episode today of Africa Today. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for more to come on Nile TV International. This was Abdel.